This is going to be a breakdown of the most insane comeback in classic Tetris history. It was so remarkable that there was even some controversy over whether it was cheated, and I'll be breaking that down as well. So first, a little bit of context to the tournament. For most of competitive NES Tetris history, virtually all players used the built-in piece movement of the game when you hold down the buttons, known as playing with DAS. In recent years, hyper tapping and rolling have emerged as the dominant playstyles, as they are able to move the pieces much faster. But a significant portion of the competitive community has remained fans of the DAS playstyle, both for nostalgic reasons and for the interest of seeing what players can do within its limitations. It was for this reason that community member and player Scamper spent the last several months organizing the Classic Tetris DAS Real Tournament, a massive 64-player bracket exclusively played within the limitations of DAS. After dozens of matches and a crowd-funded prize pool that rose up to $1,200, it was only fitting that one of the finalists was Pixel Andy, the #1 seed and a true titan of the Tetris community who had made the World Finals in 2020 and the World Semifinals in 2021. He was an expert with DAS, having started out as a DAS player before later learning hypertapping and rolling. The other finalist, NGC Man, was a very strong player in his own right, with an impressive resume of achievements, most notably holding the world record on a level 19 start with DAS. But he was definitely the underdog here. In a best-of-7 match, he'd managed to hold on long enough to make it go the distance, as both players were now tied at 3 games apiece in the 7th deciding game. But to put it bluntly, by this point, NGC Man was basically screwed. How screwed? Well, with DAS, the most significant barrier is the level speeds. While the newer playstyles can survive for quite a long time, the current world record in NTSC is level 95 by Roller Eric ICX, with DAS, players hit a hard wall at level 29, the fastest speed in the game, where the pieces can no longer reliably move to the side. So in head-to-head matches where the highest score at the end of the game wins, DAS players must try to score all their points before level 29. So at this moment, Pixel Andy is massively ahead by nearly 200,000 points, which is the equivalent of a 5.74 Tetris lead. That's bad enough, but NGC Man is in the middle of level 26 at 206 lines, meaning he is very close to level 29, which comes at 230 lines. The pace potential statistic shows what each player could score if they played perfectly until level 29. NGC Man has enough lines left to get 6 Tetrises, which is 4 lines at once, the most valuable line clear, along with 3 lines to spare, for a maximum potential score of 915,000, which would barely put him back in the lead over Andy's 896,000. Problem is, Andy's still playing, and his pace potential is over 1 million. And to make matters even worse, NGC Man is about to misdrop a Z piece and burn a single. Not only does that use up one of his 3 spare line clears, he must now waste the other 2 lines clearing off these rows to get back to a clean stack, and then play perfectly all the way until level 29 to even have a chance. And even though he gets a Tetris to start clawing back, Andy's board is perfectly clean. He skims away a line while keeping his Tetris well open, then scores a Tetris to go up to 932,000, which is now higher than NGC Man's maximum scoring potential at 911,000. So Andy has now seemingly put the game out of reach. The best NGC Man can do is play perfectly and come 1 Tetris short. But he does have the optimal setup to clear away the top 2 rows of the Z piece, and manages to do so cleanly. So he is now in position to try for a perfect run of Tetrises. But in clearing away the Z piece, he's now transferred his Tetris well over to the center, which is more difficult to maintain. And Andy has another Tetris setup, but ends up burning a line with an S piece that doesn't cleanly resolve, right as NGC Man has gotten another Tetris. Andy is now scrambling to try and reopen the well, but he's on level 28 and quickly running out of time. NGC Man gets another Tetris, continuing to play perfectly, and Andy ends up burning into level 29 at 230 lines, unable to do anything more. Still though, he seemingly scored enough to clutch out the victory. But NGC Man is still going. He scores another Tetris and is now down only 2.8 Tetrises. 3 Tetrises would win it. He continues stacking. He cannot make a single error at this point. His board is getting very uneven, but he gets a line piece just in time for another Tetris, and is set up for one more, but this is seemingly the end of the road. NGC Man is at 229 lines. One more line clear of any kind will get him into level 29. He needs 2 more Tetrises to win. It should be impossible, but there is one last thing he can try to do, and in fact, the misdrop of the Z piece 2 levels earlier put him in position to do it. He would not be able to get a line piece over to the right side for a Tetris on level 29, but now that his well is moved to the center, if he could somehow set up for 2 Tetrises, he would be able to get an extra Tetris on level 29 without having to to move the line piece to the sides. He needs 8 perfect rows of setup to do this. He has 6 and is still stacking, waiting for something for the left. He doesn't take a Tetris with the line piece and instead just barely gets it over to the left. He knows what he has to do and now has 8 rows set up, but he now needs 2 line pieces in very quick succession. His board's up too high. He can no longer move pieces fully to the side. But there's 1 line piece. He puts it down the center, barely maneuvers 2 pieces off to the side, and gets a line piece for the extra Tetris on level 29 in 1 moment. He wins the game. He wins the match. He wins the entire tournament. He can't believe it. He runs across the room, falling to his knees. This is perhaps the most incredible finish to any classic Tetris game ever. Getting an extra Tetris on level 29 in competition is unbelievably rare, and across over 27,000 recorded competitive matches, it's only happened a handful of times. In April 2018, Green Tea did it against Corion in the Classic Tetris Monthly Finals, but still lost by 1 Tetris. In November 2020, in his last match ever, the 7-time world champion Jonas did it against Huffaluffagus in the World Championships Top 16, and again, still lost by 1 Tetris. In October 2021, Adam NTS did it against Moya in the early rounds of the World Championships, but he was several Tetrises behind and not close to completing a comeback. And in March 2022, Bendy did it against Leo in the CTM Tier 1 Community Tournament, and again, still came 1 Tetris short. This was not only the first time, according to NGC Man, that he had ever gotten an extra Tetris on level 29 with Das in a complete game. It was the first time a Das player had ever done it to win a game, let alone with an entire tournament and prize pool on the line. But as with many legendary performances, sometimes there is suspicion of cheating, and an investigation was opened after some players pointed to a suspicious move NGC Man made while setting up the extra Tetris. Basically, one of the hard limits of Das is that from levels 19 to 28, you cannot stack a line piece vertically higher than 6 rows on the left with just the built-in piece movement. But at this moment, when NGC Man is trying to build out the left side of his stack, he gets a line piece over 7 rows high. Now, this isn't immediately convicting because he could have used an advanced move called a quick tap. The simplified explanation of a quick tap is that Das is sluggish on all the side-to-side movements except the first one, where it moves over on the very next frame. So quick taps take advantage of this. A famous example is when Green Tea used a quick tap to save himself in the 2018 World Semifinals. Right as the line piece is 1 row away from the side, Green Tea uses a perfectly timed second tap to get the piece over with the first frame movement. Quick taps are still considered to be within the umbrella of the Das playstyle because unlike hyper tapping, which uses rapid button presses for every piece movement, quick taps do not use button presses for consecutive horizontal movements. But here's the problem. If you look at Green Tea's quick tap, the final 2 movements are the ones that are supposed to happen quickly. With NGC Man, when you slow down the tape, the 2 quickest movements happen in the middle, which would seem to suggest that NGC Man hyper tapped faster than the native limitations of Das, which would be blatantly against the rules. NGC Man was adamant that he quick tapped, but so much was at stake that his title was temporarily rescinded so that the evidence could be examined. And another community member, Fractal, ended up figuring out what had happened. Because the game was live streamed, several of the frames ended up getting lost in the live broadcast, giving an inaccurate representation of the piece movement in the slow motion playback. But when Fractal looked at the location of the line piece on the board compared to where it should be if it were quick tapped, it was a perfect match. This was pretty conclusive proof that NGC Man actually did quick tap the piece, as the chances of him hyper tapping in exactly the same way as a quick tap are infinitesimally small. The investigation was closed and NGC Man's title was restored. Fractal even went the extra mile and reverse engineered the seed location for the piece sequence that NGC Man was on at the end of the game and experimented with different placements to find several alternate solutions that would have given an extra Tetris as well, including this ultra cheeky solution with a vertical eye-tuck setup, which is a good segue to address the only reason anyone might have to critique NGC Man's performance, which is, didn't he just get lucky with the pieces? Well, yeah, of course he did, but anyone can get lucky with pieces. It takes a truly elite player to take advantage of the pieces in the way NGC Man did under incredible pressure and play the last 3 levels to perfection, including pulling off the risky quick tap to set up the final Tetris. NGC Man's victory was very well deserved and a fitting tribute to the Das playstyle. And as it so happens, Scamper's Classic Tetris Das tournament isn't the only Das tournament happening this year. It was just announced this past last week that there's going to be a live World Cup of DAS in Germany on the 20th and 21st of August. And if the previous tournaments held in Germany are any indication, it will most likely be a very well run event. If you are interested in finding out more or attending, I will have a link to their Discord page in the description, along with a link to Sir Mazer's video about it as well. And if you're interested in seeing the full match between NGC Man and Andy, it's going to be uploaded to the Classic Tetris Monthly YouTube channel along with the rest of the top 8. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.